Hello everyone, welcome to here. We're here, aren't we? Well, I guess so. So today we're going to talk about enharmonic equivalents and what exactly they are and why they even exist. So what even is an enharmonic equivalent? Well, an enharmonic equivalent are two separate notes that share one pitch. So for example, the notes G sharp and A flat are enharmonic equivalents of each other. So let me show you what that means. So if we try to find a G sharp note on the fretboard, we find one right here, right? And now if we try to find an A flat note, we find one also right here. Oh God, right there. Why? Because the G note is right here. So when you sharpen a G note, you bring it up a half step. So that lands us right there. And when we flatten a note, we bring it down a half step. So if A is here, A flat is here, which means G sharp and A flat share the exact same real estate. You know? So that's what means. So that's what enharmonic equivalence means. They're separate notes, but they share the exact same pitch. And so another example of an enharmonic equivalent would be the notes B sharp and C. They are separate notes, but they share the same pitch. So this is the B note, so B sharp is right there, and this is the C note. So just like there are notes that are enharmonic equivalents of each other, there are also keys that are enharmonic equivalents of each other. And so these keys are two separate keys that share, note for note, the exact same pitch, but each note is called by a different name, depending which key you're in of the two, you know? So for example, the keys C sharp major and D flat major are enharmonic equivalents to each other, which means that every note in both of these keys share the exact same pitch. So let's look at the notes that make each of these keys. So in C sharp major, your notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, all sharpened. And notice how we have a B sharp and an E sharp in this key, which theoretically shouldn't exist, right? There shouldn't be a B sharp or an F sharp. Well, let's just put a pin in that, okay? We'll circle back to that. And in B flat major, your notes are B flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, and C. So let me play those two scales on the fretboard for you. So to play a scale in the key of C sharp major, we first need to find a C sharp note, right? So we find one right here. So let's play that scale together and we'll name the notes out loud as we play. C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. And now let's play the scale of the key D flat major. And in order to do that, we need to find a D flat note, right? So let's find one. Okay, cool. So D is here, so D flat is right here. And looky, you see? You see it? This is exactly where the C sharp note was. Remember? A minute ago? It's right there. So let's play this scale, D flat major, and we'll see what notes there is in there. So D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. So see how these two separate keys share the exact same scale, location, the pitch of the scales? Oh dear, let me say that again. So you see how the C sharp major scale is right there, and the D flat major scale is also right there. So you see what I mean? Two separate keys that share the same pitch? That's what an enharmonic equivalent is. And so why do we even have enharmonic equivalents? Keys. Why? If C sharp is a key and it's the same as D flat, why do we even have D flat? It's stupid. And the reason that is because theoretically we can build scales and keys off of each note in the musical alphabet. And so C sharp is a note and D flat is a note. So you can build keys on both of them. You can't deny one and not the other. That wouldn't be very nice. And so when we do build keys off of each of these notes, it just happens that way. It's really more just for theoretical consistency more than anything. Because in practice, enharmonic equivalents really aren't all that useful. You know what I mean? Because if you're playing something in C sharp major, you are also playing it in D flat major. So it really just comes down to preference on what you personally want to call it. And it also comes down to music notation, so how these keys read on staff paper. Some people would prefer to read and write something in the key of C sharp major, and some people would prefer to read and write it in the key of D flat major. So again, just preference. And so now how and why do these enharmonic equivalent notes exist in our keys? So again, back to B sharp and E sharp, right? How did they get there? How did we end up with those notes that seemingly shouldn't exist in music, right? Well, that's because of the rules we have to follow while building keys. So the first rule, let me put my guitar down. So the first rule is there can't be both a sharp and a flat in a key. There has to be just a series of sharps, series of flats, or no sharps or flats at all. The second rule is that each note has to be represented only once and in order. So basically what this means is that in a key, you can't have the notes, let's say A sharp, C, whatever, because You can't have A twice, right? You can only have it once. And C doesn't come after A. You're missing a B. So that doesn't work. And it's because of these rules that we have to follow in order to build our keys that our enharmonic equivalent notes are born. So now back to our B sharp and E sharp conundrum, okay? My stomach just growled, did you hear that? So in order to understand how these notes even came into existence in these keys, we need to build the key C sharp major, right? Since that's where those notes live in, okay? So to build this major key, we need to follow a specific formula. And that formula is whole step, half step, whole step, half step. And we apply this formula to the alphabetical musical alphabet notes. Yeah. And these steps, whole step, half step, in this formula is referring to the distance to the next note. So a whole step is going to be 2 notes away or 2 frets away. So this would be a whole step. And a half step would be 1 note over or 1 fret over. So that is a half step. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Okay. So let's go through this together. Since we want to build a scale in the key of C sharp major, we first need to start on the C sharp note. And from there, according to our formula, we need to move up a whole step. So that lands us on our D sharp and E flat note, which are enharmonic equivalents of each other, right? But which one are we gonna pick? They're both there. How do we know which one we need? Well, if we go back to our rules, we know that each note has to be represented once in order. So we have to pick D because D comes after C. So the next note in our scale is D sharp. And now from D sharp, we have to move up another whole step according to our formula, right? So when we move up a whole step from D sharp, that lands us on the F note. But we have a little problem here, don't we? F doesn't come after D. So the next note has to be E. No choice. We don't have a choice in the matter, okay? So now we have to think, how far away is the E note from the F note? It's a half step away, right? So what happens when you sharpen a note? You bring it up a half step. So if we sharpen the E note, we land on F, which is exactly the pitch we need to be at. But we need to call it E sharp because the next letter in our key, in our scale, needs to be E. So just like that, we've created our first enharmonic equivalent. And hopefully you could tell why. Because of the rules. There are rules, okay? And so that's the reason we refer to this note. Let me show you. So if we went back to our scale here, E sharp, D sharp, E sharp, and look at this note here. This note is actually on the fret, the F note, right? But we call it E sharp. So really, enharmonic equivalent notes exist within a key, really just to keep order and consistency within the key. So let's just finish our scale here, right? So we're on E sharp, which is really F, but E sharp. And from E sharp, we have to move up a half step. And that lands us on F sharp, which is fine. That's great. That's our next letter in the key, right? And from F sharp, we now need to move up another whole step. And that lands us on G sharp and A flat. And again, we'll pick G sharp, right? From there, we need to move up another whole step, and that lands us on A sharp or B flat. And again, we'll pick A sharp. And then we'll move up another whole step, which lands us to the C note. Looky here. We have a problem, don't we? Don't we? The problem is we can't have a C note yet. We haven't had a B note yet. So again, if we need to have a B note, how do we get our B note to be the pitch of C? Well, if we sharpen the B, we move it up a half step, turning it into a B sharp, but playing the C pitch. Let me show you. C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp. But this note on the fretboard is really the C note, but we call it in this key B sharp. And again, in this key, we would have to refer to that specific note, that specific pitch, as B sharp and not C, even though it technically is the C note, because it would make it theoretically incorrect to call it that in this key. That's all.
Hello everyone, it's me from the future. Don't be frightened. I just realized while I'm editing that I forgot to go over the last step, the half step. So basically, from B sharp, you're going to go up a half step, which brings you to C sharp, which is the octave of, so fireworks? Sorry, it's fireworks. So C sharp to C sharp, that's your full scale. Okay, that's all. Back to the past.
So that's it, guys. Those are your enharmonic equivalents and why they even exist. Hopefully that was helpful and not confusing. I think it was okay. I think we did good. So that's all. Really, I don't know what else to say. I feel awkward now. I'm working on it, but it's SpongeBob. Don't forget, everyone. I'm going to solve a Rubik's Cube at 5,000 subscribers. So you should probably subscribe. If you want to watch me watch this, yeah. There. In our favorite rocket ship. So you want to know what I really want to talk about? Okay. Now we're going to have a conversation. Here's what I want to talk about. Okay? Pikachu. He has a black stripe on his tail. Okay? He has always had a black stripe on his tail. You're going to try to tell me that he never had a black stripe on his tail? I don't think so. I remember specifically when I was a kid, okay, where I had a game. It was a pin the tail on the Pikachu. It was very revolutionary. And so it was a board you put up on the wall, right? Put it up on the wall, and then they had little like plastic Pikachu tails. And you had to blindfold and, you know. And I remember specifically looking at these series of Pikachu tails that I had. We had a few because, you know, it's a game. I remember looking at these tails and specifically acknowledging that there was a black stripe on them. And now you're gonna tell me that there was never a black stripe on Pikachu tails? I don't think so. I don't think so. Something is going on. Okay, so now listen. So back to, I don't know if you watched my other video where I talked about my ghost story. It wasn't a ghost story, really. It was a timeline hopping story. Go watch that story. You didn't have to watch the entire lesson if you don't want to. Just watch the ghost story part. There's a timestamp, okay? I'll link it down below. How are people showing up in places where they are not? And then how are Pikachu tails all of a sudden not having black stripes anymore? So that's all. That's all I wanted to talk about. Pikachu tails and what else did we talk about today? Enharmonic equivalence. Yeah, I hope that you have yourself a great day. And that's all. These are my pants. Enjoy your day, guys. And enjoy your enharmonic equivalents. And your Pikachus. Okay, toodles.